Guys, we've got one of the big ones here. We've got the Acer Predator 17 X here with the Kaby Lake processor, with the GTX 1080, but in a middle variant that comes in at 3 grand, 3,000 euros. So there is a high-end variant. There is a variant here with 64 gigs of RAM, with 1.5 terabyte SSD, with 2 terabytes of spinning hard drive. We've taken the more sensible option at 3 grand here, but it still has that GTX 1080 in. It's VR capable, it's 4K capable, it comes in our top 10 of gaming laptops in 2017 so far. It's got one of the most powerful CPUs that you can get on a laptop so far this year. Take a look at some of the specifications, at some of our test results coming up in this video, and we'll have a look at some gaming, of course, as well. There it is, the Acer Predator 17 X. Let's just start by saying this is a hugely heavy laptop. In fact, possibly one of the most, in fact, the heaviest laptop I've tested here on Notebook Check since I started in 2015. We are talking about 3.5 kilos worth of laptop. But not only that, this box still weighs a huge amount, because inside we've got a 1.5 kilo netzteil, a 1.5 kilo power adapter. That is huge, bringing this up to nearly 6 kilos in weight, 5.6, 5.7 kilos in weight. I've never, ever seen a power adapter that heavy. 330 watts this will take in, and it will put out, it actually won't even put out enough to keep this thing charging while it's under full load. Now that's extreme load, we'll talk about that in a minute. First, let's just clear up here. We'll go around the device, we'll talk about some of the specifications, and we'll get into the test results. So despite me not being a massive gamer, although I am someone that quite likes a little bit of power because of the video editing that I do, I don't get overexcited about gaming laptops, but this is something special. This is something leading edge, and we scored it 86%. I'm gonna check that for you on the full review. 87% is what we scored it. And it comes in at about number 4, number 5, number 6. There's number 5, 6, and 7 are equal at 86%. So it comes in around number 4 in our top 10 of gaming laptops so far. A beautiful finish, a soft touch finish that's kind of like rubberized finish. This is a little bit cold. I think it's been in the DHL depot over the weekend. Does mean it will be a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but no problem in cleaning that. Let's just open this up. So inside, we have Core i7 7820HK. That's the version that can be overclocked. And in this software that Acer have built, you'll be able to overclock it. There's 2 steps of overclocking, going all the way up to 4.3 gigahertz is the highest you get on the clock rate when it's overclocked. But don't forget, you've got the GTX 1080 inside, one of the highest end graphics cards there is at the moment. 75 Hz IPS panel. We'll talk about some of the specs on that, some of the test results on that, sorry, in a minute. Also with G-Sync support as well. So G-Sync always tells me that the manufacturer wants you to use that screen. Now there are devices around. I mean, we looked at the Dell, or was it the Inspiron 15 last week, or the week before, the 7000 series with the horrible full HD screen. Not a device that you want to do the gaming on the device. It's designed for an external screen. This one has a nice screen. Let's go around the keyboard, some of the ports, and then we'll get into more of the test results. So keyboard, pretty good. There's maybe a 2mm throat on those keys. They feel really nice. Obviously they're backlit, and you've got that multicolored backlighting that you can configure into, I think, 4 different zones. You've got backlights for that WASD keyboard configuration up there as well. All really nice. A separate button for enabling and disabling the touchpad, so that's nice. And keyboard buttons are really nice all around. Not any noticeable flex really in this. The actual screen, a tiny little bit. Come on, this is a 17-inch monitor. I'm not expecting this to be a metal frame. In fact, in some respects, a little bit of wobble isn't bad. It actually absorbs some energy. Let's take a look at that screen now. As soon as I turned it on, I could see the colors were good, the contrast was good, the whites were good. We've got a maximum brightness here of 380 nits for a 17-inch panel. That is really, really good. Grayscale and color accuracy was reasonable out of the box, but actually we were able to configure it to even better accuracy. We've got the ICC color file in the full review. If you've got the Predator 17 X, this model, go and download that, install it, and it's a good starting point for increasing the accuracy of the colors. 84% sRGB is not a great range of colors, and 55% Adobe RGB as well. Important to note that there was no PWM detected on this, so those of you that are sensitive to the pulse width modulation method of adjusting brightness, there is no PWM on this, so you can be happy that you're not going to hurt your eyes if you're sensitive to that. Overall, a pretty good IPS display, good viewing angles, good brightness, good contrast, a really enjoyable experience. I haven't got anything to moan about on the chassis. Maybe the design of the back of it is typical Predator, isn't it? It's typical gaming, that black and red. And I've seen worse. I've seen a lot worse on gaming devices, so this isn't too bad. Just that weight, it's incredible. 3.6 kilograms. And when you think about that power supply there, another 1.6 kilos. This is one of the heaviest devices you'll find. We'll talk about the battery that's inside as well, and why there's a big battery inside a bit later. Let's get on to the ports now though. No ports on the back of the device. Everything appears on the side, and you won't see an optical drive on this as well. So there's no Blu-ray, no DVD rewriter on it. On this side, power, 2 USB 3s, separate audio in and headphone ports, and the SD card reader. Now the SD card reader is not the highest end. We're getting about 70 to 80 megabytes read and copy speeds out of that on a high-end Toshiba SD card. It's better than most, but not up there with the high-end devices. So of all the tests that we did, this one is a little bit lower than some of the other comparable devices. Switching it round, you'll see another 2 USB 3 ports, the USB-C with Thunderbolt, a full-size display port, and a full-size HDMI port as well. You've got the killer gigabit Ethernet port there. There's also a killer Wi-Fi inside, which, by the way, got top marks, got absolutely top marks, over 600 megabits per second transfer rate on that, so that's really nice. There's also a Kensington lock port there, which you might want to consider using on 3 grand's worth of gaming kit. One of the nice things about this is this little access port on the bottom, which will allow you to get to the SSD, to the 2 banks of memory, and to the spinning hard drive as well. That's really simple to get off, and in fact you can actually get the whole of the back off of this, and I'm going to do that in a second video. If you want to see pictures of the internals of this, check out the full review. There are pictures where we've had to back off of that, so you'll be able to see inside. But after this video, I will put a video up with the internals and a look at what's swappable, what's accessible, what's exchangeable, and what's upgradable inside this Predator 17 X. You'll also see subwoofer on this. Now, I think it was the GT72 VR from MSI. Got better performance out of the loudspeakers in terms of volume, slightly more volume, but in terms of like the actual curve or the response of the system, this is pretty much the same. So a nice rounded sound, nothing really to complain about. It's just a tick lower in terms of maximum volume, but the response curve, also pretty much the same. We'll talk about noise and heat and throttling a bit later in this review video. Now at the front of this video, I mentioned that this has one of the highest performing CPUs of all laptops. It's true. If you put it to overclocking level 2, you're up there with the Asus G701 with a Cinebench R15 score of 184. That's single CPU. You go to the multi-CPU, it's just slightly behind, 3% behind the Asus G701, but really up there as one of the best CPU performances there are. And there's an SSD in here that is fast too. It's PCIe connected. And if you look at the PC Mark 8 scores, it gives away the fact that this is a very, very fast SSD inside. 6,123 points on the PC Mark 8 score. And if I just scroll down to the Crystal Disk Mark scores there, you're getting 1.2 gigabytes, 1.3, nearly 1.4 gigabytes on the write and 1.5 gigabytes a second on the read. So huge amounts of performance on the SSD. The 1 terabyte hard drive is a spinning hard drive. It's not that interesting in terms of performance. And in fact, if you're thinking about storing, for example, 4K videos, 30, 40, 50 gigabytes per video. If you're thinking about storing a massive amount of games, and if you think about, it has to be said to creep on Windows 10 in terms of its disk usage capability, you might be thinking about having a higher capacity SSD and a higher capacity spinning hard drive as well. Good thing is you can upgrade those at a later stage. I think for the first 6 months at least, unless you're a really heavy user, you're not going to have any problem with the storage capacities on the SSD or the spinning hard drive. So let's look at some of the graphics performance now. This is the important part of this bit of kit. 3D Mark 11, 28,595 points. Now the GT73 VR scored about the same, and the G701 VIK, which is the, I think number 4 in our top 10 of gaming laptops, scored 10% more. So a little bit more on the 3D Mark from the Asus G701, but let's just scroll down to that green screen of up to 4K. Now we're talking in that right-hand column there of 4K screen test results, screen figures there of up to 78.5 frames a second in 4K. Now that doesn't just mean you can put it on a huge monitor at 4K. It also means that this is going to be VR ready. And if we run it through the Steam VR test, just to see if it performs well enough, of course, it's going to be VR capable. No problems about that. 4K usually means VR. So we're at a level here, which is pretty much all you need for every game out there and for every VR experience out there right now. So we can talk about heat, noise, and throttling. Probably the least important of those is noise in terms of gaming, because a lot of you will have headphones on, and really all of these devices, you have to expect a lot of noise under full load. 50 dBA on this is noticeable. There are worse ones out there, but most of them are up there, sort of 48, 52 dB, and you will be able to hear them. So I think most of you that are gaming are already got your headphones on. Maybe that's not too much of an issue. What's more of an issue is throttling, and we did get some throttling on this after 2 hours of our full load test. Let's just say during that test, we measured the heat as well, internally up to 80 degrees centigrade, externally up to I think 48 degrees on the outside, 44, 48, 42.8 and 44 around this sort of 7890 key area here on the outside. Not too bad. Now throttling average over 2 hours in our maximum load test, that CPU and GPU load, which you rarely will find under any gaming circumstances, is an average of 3.0 gigahertz as compared to the single core 4.3 gigahertz maximum that you can get out of this. So that's around 20% less performance after a 2 hour load test as compared to fresh out of the box. Gaming tends to have moments of quietness. You'll be surprised, but there are moments of quietness in terms of GPU and CPU load which do let the device catch up in terms of thermals. So you won't have that much of a problem, but do bear in mind there is some throttling here. If you really want to use this for some sort of, I don't know, number crunching, mathematical number crunching, then there will be a slowdown after an hour or so in terms of performance. Under load as well, we did notice that 330 watt power adapter doesn't actually keep up with the power requirements in the device. It's charging or trying to charge, and it's also taking charge out of the batteries as well. So that 330 watt power supply not managing to keep up with the full load test, but it's fairly closely matched. And I think under gaming, you won't see problems with the battery level lowering. Only under our full CPU and GPU load test did we see that. And that brings us on to battery life. There's an 88 watt hour battery inside this. If that was an Ultrabook, that would be bringing you 10, 12 hours of Wi-Fi browsing capability. Here you're gonna get about 4 to 5 hours of Wi-Fi browsing, about 4 hours worth of video playback. I kind of asked myself why you actually need a battery in a device like this that's probably only ever going to be used under battery when you take it between rooms, take it between dorm rooms, and maybe you want to get an hour of gaming done on the train. But again, you're going to have a payoff there because you'll get 30% less performance on the battery. You won't be able to overclock it. That switches off under battery power. So there's a question there, why you need such a big battery. 1.5 hours under our full load test is not that great, but then again, you won't see much more than 2 on any other device. Maybe that's a negative point. Maybe the battery life is a negative point. Maybe the weight is a negative point. Maybe that throttling is a negative point if you're using this for certain applications. But I think for most of you that are focused on gaming, those are not major issues at all. And in fact, I think the biggest issue here is the weight. 3.5 kilos or 3.6 kilos, and that power adapter, 1.6 kilos, weighs more than most laptops itself. That could be a problem if you want to transport this around. If this is your home PC, your desktop PC, that's not too much of an issue, but you need to bear that weight in mind when you're thinking about this. Overall though, a fantastic device, really coming in with great all-round scores, really balanced scores, great screen, good keyboards, good connectivity, SSDs fine, GPU is up there at the top level, CPU is up there at the top level. You may want a Blu-ray, you may want a Blu-ray recorder or a DVD rewriter on this, but please, they're costing what, 50 euros, external USB one? I think you're probably okay. Predator17 X, if you've got one of last year's models, especially that 4,800 euro one with the 64 gig RAM in it and the 1.5 terabyte SSD and the 2 gig storage. I'd like to hear from you, what you think about the upgrade to Kaby Lake, whether it's worth it. But it seems to be that this in 2017 is going to stay for quite a long time in our top 10. I wouldn't be surprised if it's still there at the end of 2017. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share this video, don't forget to subscribe. You'll get notifications when I do the next video, which is going to be the back of this. Taking the back off this, that's a 2-section back removal. You've got the access panel and you can get the full back off as well. Plus another, behind me, Acer gaming laptop coming in at a much lower price than this. It's a GTX 1050, I believe, laptop. Still full HD gaming across the board, up to high settings, but that won't be a VR and that won't be a 4K capable device, but it's very interesting all the same. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next video.